Hey guys, this is a review that was long time coming, and I'm gonna jam three things together in one review, and I'm gonna talk about three things that I've watched recently, and I'm gonna combine this review. So stay tuned, and you can check out which is where. The first one that I'm going to be reviewing is Waiting for the Barbarians, starring Johnny Depp, Mark Rylance, and Robert Pattinson. The second thing that I'm gonna be reviewing is Wonder Woman 1984. Oh yes, that's pretty much my review. And number third is The Queen's Gambit. I know I'm a bit late, and I know I saw it like ages ago, but I still want to talk about it. So watch out. Let's start with Waiting for the Barbarians. Set in a basically unnamed empire, there is a professor or an archaeologist sort of a person. He's a learned scholar, and it's a small community living off in some desert, and he's taking care of this community. Not just taking care, but he's sort of just supervising the community, and it's sort of governed on very loose laws, and nobody really cares what the empire really wants to do. They're living in this small little commune sort of a situation, and then in comes these foot soldiers, headed by Johnny Depp's character Colonel Joel. And Colonel Joel is this really dictatorial, he loves torture. He's the kind of person who will literally just sort of show their authority just because they feel like it. And Mark Rylance's character is very upset by this. They don't like it. And then this guy sort of stays in that little commune for a bit and tortures the prisoners, and claims that these prisoners, these wild people living somewhere farther away from this commune, are the real enemies, and they are going to wage war against them, etc. But he's not really somebody who's out for justice, and this is not really a real perceived threat. They're just there to pillage, and they're just there to show their power and show just how powerful they are against these people. One thing leads to another. This archaeologist slash professor falls in love with one of the girls who was held captive, and he sort of nurses her back to health and then gives her back to her family. But the anger in that community and in those group of people is so high. They just don't want to make amends. They don't want to make peace. And even though this professor wants the girl to stay with her, she still doesn't. She goes back to the family. And this kind of guilt and sort of love that he feels for her, this affection that he feels for her, is mistaken by some of the villagers as lust. And even though we do feel like there's this relationship between the two of them, it still feels like most of it is mostly platonic, and it just feels like he's just sublimating his guilt through this relationship. And everything is really slow and painful to watch. And it is a slow and painful decline of what seems like a small peaceful community that is ruined by the thirst for power and corruption. And I think that is the borderline message of the film. Beautiful performances by everybody, including Johnny Depp and Mark Rylance and Robert Pattinson. Johnny Depp's performance as Colonel Joel is as chilling as it gets, and it reminded me of Colonel Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards. And Mark Rylance carries most of the film, and he tries, but the narration and the sort of pace of the film is too laggy. It could have been just a little bit quicker. More things could have happened. So the film is based on a novel, and the novel and the film's writer are the same, Mr. Coetzee. So what happens usually with writers who, with the novelists who want to bring their own film into the screenplay, is that I feel like sometimes they are too possessive of their screenplay, of their words. So they don't, when they shift it to screenplay, they don't want to let go of even the, what is clearly not as important for the big screen. So I feel like when writers do it, they get attached to the scripts, and it's only natural because it's their baby. So they really don't want to be, chopping off of things and then creating it for the big screen. But the big screen requires something a bit different, and it requires space. So you understand that why sometimes this sort of combination fails. So when you talk about Quentin Tarantino writes for the cinema. He writes for the screen. He sees the screenplay as the screenplay. There's not some novel. But let's compare it to somebody like a Pakistani writer, Umaira Ahmed. When she writes for a book and then she converts that into a series, she always tends to lag it, and that's the problem. And it happens. It has happened with J.K. Rowling as well. So that's why a screenplay has a different sort of technique to it. And I feel like if that would have added, that could have been done, the film would have been faster. It would have been less taxing in certain places. Even though I'm not going to talk about Wonder Woman 1984. So even though 1984 was also very fast and it was supposed to be an action film, actually it was Waiting for the Barbarians which kept me on the edge a whole lot more. So let's talk about now Wonder Woman 84, set in, well, 84. It's the age of, televisions making a boom and television personalities being powerful. And in this, we see Gal Gadot's character working in a museum, and suddenly there's a wishing stone, and whoever wishes after holding that stone, they get their wish. She gets back her old boyfriend, Kirsten Dunst, who's bit of basically a nerd. She becomes, she becomes like Gal Gadot. She becomes like Diana, who's very powerful and very impressive and very beautiful, and everybody loves her. So there is a very lame plot point, which is this, like, and there's no explanation, there's no backstory to something like this, and that's why it just sort of hits you in the face when it happens. Then the second biggest problem with Wonder Woman 84 is the fact that it is supposed to be an action film, and there are only two decent action sequences, and we're basically listening to two women chat with each other over tea and coffee and do the sisterly bonding, which is, I'm all for that, that's not a problem. But it has very little place in an action film where the sequences should be all about people thrashing and killing and fighting and all those kind of things. And I really wanted to see the Wonder Woman in action, but that wasn't really happening a lot anyways. And one or two sequences were actually decent, especially one where Gal Gadot is sort of in a car and then she's trying to rescue children. I know people have made a lot of fun about that, but she's trying to rescue children. And then there is another sequence between her and Kirsten Dunst towards the very end of the film. And finally, I don't know if I watched a chipped version or something, but then the character just disappears. Kirsten Dunst's character is just, it's just sitting and watching the sunset, and that's it. It's gone. You don't see any change in the character. And oh my god, the horrible cliches that come in, like this young child running towards his father saying father, 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 and then the father just realizing and because of what, a speech by Gal Gadot. Really? Is that how villains turn these days? I mean, last I heard Thanos had to kill everybody and people had to die and people had to suffer misery for like 3 movies or something. I don't know. Anyway, 2 movies. But for him to actually understand, or actually he didn't understand to the very end, he was very convinced that what he did was the right thing. He had to be killed off. But I don't know what target market they were really going for in Wonder Woman. So I don't know, whatever it was, it just absolutely failed. What a disaster, because I was really looking forward to a film during these pandemic times where we could watch it and we could want to watch it again and again. And notwithstanding Tenet, which you may want to watch again because of, well, maybe you didn't understand it for the first time, but with Wonder Woman, I think that it's such a failed opportunity. I like Captain Marvel much more. I like the first Wonder Woman film much more than this one, and it's basically a disappointment. Last but not the least, the Netflix series The Queen's Gambit was a big boring dud. I think that it tried a lot. The treatment was amazing of the novel, of the story, of the very basic story. Not a lot of questions were very befuddling, or I know there was a lot of hue and cry about how great it was, but it was pretty much an average story with very average plot lines and with very average pitfalls. I thought it would have more, but it didn't. Maybe people had hyped it up so much and I was like, oh, what is it, what are they talking about? And maybe I saw it after that, after the hype. And sometimes when you watch something after the hype, it just sort of doesn't live up to your expectations. But I tried seeing what was so great about it, and I think one of the great things about it was the fact that it was a female protagonist who was winning over men in chess championships at a time when chess championships were mostly a man's game, and women had to face a lot of misogyny and a lot of hurdles and barriers to sort of escape that, or climb over those things. So I think that was the main message which people resonated with, because otherwise there wasn't much in the story to like or appreciate. Some really good performances, but otherwise I think that the story was quite lame, quite plain, quite tame. So I really didn't think much of it. I think there are much better shows out there, much more entertaining shows out there, and stories about women empowerment. I have to say this, really should not rely too much on women empowerment and forget about the fact that they actually have to go and tell a story. You have to tell a funny or a beautiful or a heart-rending story, and you have to tell a story in a way that it captures your imagination, makes you believe in something in a way that isn't very slapstick, or isn't very silly, or isn't very stupid or unconvincing, or doesn't have enough arguments. I think people rely too easily on the crutch of women empowerment, or that, oh, we'll show a female protagonist who's so strong and who's just going to kick butts everywhere, and that's it, that's all we need to do. I really think writers should think beyond that, because people, okay, yes, they love it and it's all great and people buy it also, but you gotta give us more, especially for the discerning audiences who have had seen a lot of these things. And I feel like it's being used as a tool for marketing, for gimmicking, and it can only take you so far, because it's the same thing that happened with a lot of young angry men shown in the 80s, and after that they started making really bad angry young man movies and some terrible flicks. And I don't think that this is a message that should deserve to find a place in, trash cans. I think it's a very important message, it's a very sensitive message, and let's not play with a lot of emotions here. Let's not play with manipulate people's sentiments when it comes to women empowerment. It's an important message, and there are real stories, and there are women who have complex stories. So why not tell those stories, and why not tell them in a great way? I found Queen's Gambit to be pretty average. I know a lot of people will disagree with me, but it goes without saying that this is my opinion. You may agree with it, you may not agree with it. I think that a lot of people might agree that it's not the best thing you've ever seen, right? Because there's so many other great stories about women empowerment that are there. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you thought of Waiting for the Barbarians if you've seen it. Let me know what you thought of Wonder Woman 84. And let me know what other great shows are out there that you can recommend, watch, and binge watch. Take care of yourself. Thank you for watching once again. Bye.